Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anyway Whatever podcast. I am your host, Mike Fisher, and today's guest is musical duo Dance Loud. They hit me up on Instagram and asked if they could be on the show. I had never heard of them before. I was unaware of their music. It's not a type of music that I normally listen to. But once I sat down and checked out their Spotify page, they're really talented, and they've become music that we listen to in our house. And my wife is a super huge fan of them. She was the most excited to find out about a new band from my show with the band Dance Loud, and just incredibly interesting artists. I mean, they take the craft of making music as seriously as I've ever met any other artist. They are 100% DIY in-house. They're mastering. They're recording, they're all the instrumentation, they're outside sampling sounds from nature. Their music is fantastic. And they control all of it completely, and just insanely impressed with how in-depth they go with making their music. And I think people are going to be really interested in hearing about it. If you listen to this show, we have a lot of metal and punk people on, and this one it's a little bit different, but it's incredibly interesting stuff, and they're just as nice as you could be. And I'm happy now that their music is a part of my life, and I think that everybody out there will really dig what they've got going on. As always, if you are watching on YouTube, you can hit subscribe and click the little bell to make sure you get updates on the episodes, and like, share, comment. If you are listening to the podcast version, hit subscribe wherever it is you get your podcast content, and give us a review and share. And as I always say, sharing these episodes is a huge way for us to help grow the show, which has helped immensely. And I am always so thankful for all the support, and humbled by the amount of people who are listening to this show now. And I really enjoy making it, and I really enjoy finding out about new artists and new musicians, and just different ways that people make stuff. And so hearing the creative process of somebody like Dance Loud is it's fascinating to me. And so, yeah, share these episodes and help me get them out there. So, the more that the episodes get shared, the better off it is to help keeping this show going. And yeah, stick around after the intro and listen to Dance Loud. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anyway Whatever podcast. I'm your host, Mike Fisher, and today's guests are Desiree and Kristen from the group Dance Loud, and we were just chatting about how to describe what it is that their music is. So I'll go, and for me, it's definitely electronic music. Although I'm sure you guys, with all the instruments in the background, it's a combination of all different types of things.
Totally. I know people get sensitive too about this subject.
Yeah, I have a lot of musical guests on, and I'm always, just in general, as a creative person myself, I'm always, and we're going to have to get into this as we go, but I try to be careful when I tell people what their art is to me, like what it reminds me of this, or it's like it's reminiscent of this, because you never know if the person on the other end is going to be like, well, I hate that. I don't want to be compared to that thing.
We also learned never to say, you look like this celebrity. Because even if it's a good celebrity, like, they always never have a good response to whatever we have to say.
Yeah, because the grass is always greener.
We're not sensitive at all, though. We like to hear. We've had an identity crisis on this album the entire time, so we don't even care.
And art is relative and subjective, so.
Yeah, that's
Isn't it just? Mm-hmm. Isn't it just? And of course, I totally forgot to make a note of there's an artist. Oh boy, my wife Okay, well, let's just go. Let's just do a quick overview of this. So for the last week, I've been listening to your guys' music a lot. Me and my wife in the morning. We're both freelance, so in the morning time when we're doing breakfast, we put on music, and we usually try to keep it. We don't listen to death metal. Let's put it that way. And so I had this on last week, and my wife came in and she was like, "Ooh, what's this?" And I was like, "Oh, this is Dance Loud." And she's like, "Oh, those girls are going to be on." I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "This is so good." And every time I've come in the house for the last week, since like out of the art studio into the house, she's got you guys playing. She's now a super fan.
Oh, wow.
Oh, sweet. That's really good to hear.
That feeds the soul.
That's exactly why Desiree was really interested, in doing more podcasts, because she's hitting people on a level that a lot of mass, forms of marketing can't hit. It's at an intimate level.
Yeah, and so I'm sorry, I'm looking at my phone because I'm trying to find this artist that, and this goes back to kind of, my wife does hair in TV and movies, and she was one of the hairstylists on the TV show Stumptown, and there was an artist on who is a real music artist and who played a rock star on an episode of the show. And because of that, because I'm just like a complete nerd, I was like, who is that person? And my wife's like, oh, she's in this group so-and-so. And so I went and found it and listened to it, and I really loved it a lot. And when I was listening to your guys' stuff, I was like, oh, this is kind of like, and now I can't remember the goddamn name of it. So let me look really quick. God, it's so good
We've
too.
Discovered pretty cool music too from people that we've asked, like, what do we sound like? Like somebody said, Cigarettes After Sex. I have never heard of this band duo person or whatever.
Yeah, and I really liked it. It reminded me a lot of Mazzy Star, and I love Mazzy Star's music.
And it was already coming up on my Pandora, and I had no idea I'd already liked some of their stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a nerd enough. It's just I need to practice on looking stuff up. I'm too busy
There we
driving all the time
go.
or something.
Hold on one second. I'm being super unprofessional right now. It's the worst.
Oh, you're good.
I got distracted too because I'm staring at.
I'm gonna go back and find that. But yeah, speaking of Mazzy Star, which is totally random, the guest who's on the week after next is a singer songwriter named Madeline Rosine, and she has a lot of Mazzy Star stuff going on in her stuff, and she was a super sweet girl. She was really cool to record with her, and I'm excited to have her on. I have this the way that I kind of do this show is like I will record like 3 months worth of people in like 3 weeks. Like I'll do like 2 sessions a day, 3 times a week for like just like a few weeks, and just get like tons of stuff built up. And in this batch that I'm recording right now, I have like a higher than usual number of female musicians, which is super awesome. I'm super excited about that.
Oh, fun.
So I'm glad to have you guys in that batch.
Glad to be in it. Hey,
Yeah.
'cause it's man.
So you guys have been making stuff since the late 2000s, like 2008 or so.
Yep. That's when we graduated, and I was practicing using School, and then I guess we started as a duo together in 2008. So that's when we really, we were living together by 2009, so we could have the same computer to work on, and that's kind of how everything got going.
So you guys went to Columbia, I believe is what you said, and so that's where you guys met and like started getting stuff going.
We didn't meet there. It was through a mutual friend, but we found out after meeting at the club that we had classes next door to each other, so we never actually had a class together.
Yeah, because we both went from music but neither of us went for performance. And I went for music business, and Kristen went for audio arts and acoustic sound design, like audio engineering, pretty much. And so we were in some of the same music buildings, but that's where we ended up. We had met on Saturday, and then we saw each other outside the elevator on Monday. It was like, oh wow, your class is right next to mine.
And then it's just when you see someone so often, kind of like an advertisement, you're bound to, like, who is this person? Because I think I was showing up in her MySpace comments as well from just having mutual friends.
MySpace.
Oh yeah, 2008 MySpace days.
Good old MySpace, my face. Mm-hmm. Here I am again by the elevator in the MySpace at the club in your then house, showing up because
And it all did start. We immediately started talking about music and everything. It has always been around music. I think we were both such audiophiles growing up, and then we'd found someone that was just as weird as I am. Like, oh wow, you're almost even more odd, and this is even more interesting. So that's most of our, even to this day, all of our small talk, is breaking down recording methods and researching. Like earlier, we were watching how Pink Floyd made the animals and why and how. Excuse me, and it's just this fascination, and it's something that we are both very driven with together, and we'll started that way, and we'll probably end that way when we leave this planet.
We can really bond when our favorite bands from childhood is like Backstreet Boys on my end and Pink Floyd from her end. It's like, now you come up with this like poppy electronic dance album. It's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your guys' record that you put out is called The Moment. And from a graphic designer standpoint, immediately, like I absolutely love the cover. It's like immediately
cool.
super iconic. It's I'll put an image up so people can see what it is, but it's like, it's a speaker with like a dented center cone, and it's really, really, really good. I have spent a lot of my life at designing album covers, and I immediately was like, ooh, that was really good. It's like simple but really good.
That's like
that's
butter to my ears to hear from a graphic designer.
Yeah, because we went all out, and we had these for the vinyl version. We had these holographic images made where it goes from a dented dust cap to a disco ball, and these were two things that were just in our band room
using like lenticular images. But we put a lot of we bought even stuff for different album ideas, and this is like the 1800th album idea that was the only one to come to fruition. But we did buy crap on Amazon, like rope lights. We had so many other ideas before that. We were gonna like redo our whole garage and set up this space to create an album cover. That ended up not happening, and it ended up becoming this simple thing that expressed depth to the best that we could. Because that's why we picked a 3D lenticular thing too, was because we wanted to show that it's like a dimensional album. Like it's a space that you're entering, not, it's not just left and right. It's like the closest to 7.1 surround sound that we could do without being 7.1
in stereo. And the album cover had a lot of significance. I was reading that, album covers, if you have your face on it, tends to sell more. And, and looking at the old Simon and Garfunkel and really it was, I really loved, kind of the dark side of the moon. I really liked simplistic, yet invokes thought. And there was a lot of symbolism with the album, with it, for one being a circle. The album's meant to be heard in loops. The last song of the album and the first song of the album are two halves of a song.
Oh, wow.
So the last song is the first half. So you have to bring back to the beginning to hear that song end.
It's one of our reoccurring themes. Same thing as duality. Duality is like a reoccurring theme. So we thought like dance loud. Well, first of all, the speaker says loud, and then the disco ball says dance to me. But there's like a duality with the whole cover that we're also expressing in all of the, the music too.
Yeah, kind of like we're damaged goods, but we're hiding behind a shiny disco ball.
Shiny disco ball. Sorry,
yeah. And kind of the illusion that someone sees a dented, dust cap as it being broken, and when it's not at all. It
Yeah.
doesn't. It's just a dust cap.
Right.
It stops dust from coming in.
It has no
Even with
bearing on the sound that speaker makes.
Yeah.
Right.
And even the look that we have, like we're kind of like two shiny looking chicks that
Don't shower often.
yeah, we don't look like we don't at all act like what we look like. We're like kind of two frat boys in a way. I mean, that's even kind of sounds judgy, but I'm just saying.
Well,
like,
it's you. You can judge yourself all you want. Nobody can get mad at you for that.
I know.
Yeah, that's where touring was no issue. Where it was like, oh yeah, I mean,
Dirty? Yeah, I carry poop around in a reservoir. Yeah,
our hair doesn't get greasy. I don't know. Yeah, it takes like a week
There's
for
an
it to get
invention called
greasy.
dry shampoo for all you fellows.
Yeah, I mean, I'm married to a hairstylist. I know all about dry shampoo.
Oh yeah.
There's cans
need
and
some hair
cans and
advice,
cans of it
so.
in our house.
Oh, that's great.
Now we have to shower these more often, but it's okay. I still dry shampoo it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, maybe she can give us some advice on.
Just wear a hat.
We've been cutting our own hair for the past year, and we're all out. We're like, no, we're doing the entire 2020 home cuts, and now it's like, okay, now I'm really bored with it. Let's do something different.
Yeah, that's
Should be virtual cuts. Like she tells us exactly what.
Yeah, how to do it. Guided virtual cuts.
What do I do? Okay.
that's amazing.
Oh, I messed up. And a refund.
Yeah, I haven't really had to get. I haven't paid for a haircut in like over a decade now because my hairstylist lives in my house.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Does she cut her own hair?
No, she doesn't.
Okay.
It's funny because she is she's like multiple people who do multiple different parts of her of her hairstyling. She has like a colorist, and she has somebody who does the actual cut part of it, and she handles a little bit of her touch-up stuff in between, and stuff like that. But
Hey, it's how the music industry works.
Yeah, you get the best in every little field.
Any industry, you got a guy for everything.
totally, she actually just finished a movie. Just like a week or two ago, finished up on a feature film that she was on, and it was, we're in Los Angeles, we're out in the suburbs, and most of the time everything in LA films downtown, and so she was lucky that this movie was about the San Fernando Valley, and so it was all filmed out here in the San Fernando Valley. So her commute, some days her commute was like 2 miles.
Oh,
The
nice.
famous San Fernando Valley OG strain. I've heard of that city through that strain.
Yeah, we're out in the western part of the valley that was built initially around aerospace, and then all of the porn industry from like 79 to like 2010 was now that there is no porn industry because everything's just streaming, and there's no product anymore. And so there's just empty warehouses out here that used to just be full of VHS tapes and then DVDs. And now all those companies
And
are all
Merkins.
gone now. I mean, it's all gone now. It's like, people make porn with a camera in an apartment. That's like,
Yeah. And now we don't need warehouses to store all the Merkins.
Wouldn't it be funny if there was like a category in porn called unboxing? Sorry. Insert weird joke here.
Oh, jeez.
Sorry.
yeah, the
Tutorials.
the Merkin thing is funny because it's like a constant, she's like, oh, I had to deal with the Merkin today at work.
Oh, yeah? Oh, that's so funny.
Not many people know what that is. I love it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We learned about it from going to Maynard James Keenan's winery out in our vineyard or out in Arizona, and it was called Merkin Vineyards. And we're like, what's
Just
a
because
Merkin?
Because it's funny. He named it Merkin.
Oh, it's so funny. And then the history of it. And then it just keeps going back, and it deals with like syphilis and them hiding that. And then you couldn't show Bush on porn. And then, oh my gosh, it was just so funny. So every 4th of July, I always think of like America, but it's like spelled America.
That's hilarious.
What up? Yep. See, we don't look like the typical people that we usually, we don't act like the people that look like us.
We need more Merkins in our life.
Yeah,
Merkin.
We're hiding behind a giant merkin. That should be a good album.
Are you guys
yeah.
recording
Oh my
from
God.
your rehearsal space? Is that in your living space or is it a separate space?
It's our everything space, rehearsal, studio, living room, second living room. We have another living room. Yeah, it's our home. We have our kitchen right past this brick wall.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you guys are just a two-piece. Like, Desiree, you like do most of the instrumentation, and then Kristen, you do most of the production side of it.
Okay, so we just before this podcast, we had a whole discussion about what we do and how to describe it to people, because not many people know what DJ producer engineers do. It's like there's so many different versions in people's heads of what that is. Even what the word synthesis means, even if that's even a word. I don't even know. Who knows? But we decided if you were to take Pink Floyd, since everyone knows what that is, what did we say, Desiree? Because Desiree knows the Pink Floyd band dudes. Roger.
It would be like
Allen. I'm learning Roger Allen and.
Well, Alan was the engineer, so we're both a mixture of Alan Parsons. I feel like Kristen's a little bit more Roger Waters when it comes to synth production design. He had recorded a lot of Change when they were making money. He was a very big part of the production, and at the same time, like I do think we both have these qualities, but I feel like on the other end, like, Kristen would be a little bit more Roger Waters. I'd be a little bit more David Gilmour with the mixture of Nick Mason. I don't think really either of us have Richard Wright in us. He's the keyboardist, even though a lot of it's made through MIDI, or Moog synthesizers.
We're just not at that pianist level, but we know all the knobs.
Yeah, because someone was kind of, we were asked this past weekend from a guitarist, as we were all just jamming out, and asked, Kristen, like, well, what does she do? And it was like, because he was only a guitarist and he didn't really understand production and engineering and the art of frequency and everything that goes behind everything. And she had kind of a complicated time.
I couldn't answer his questions.
Couldn't really answer it.
Like,
and he was like, well, what instruments do you play?
Like
what key are you in?
As I'm slightly tipsy, trying to jam, like a drunk jam out, and I'm downloading free synthesizers on my phone, but I can't even hear it.
Just to join in.
Just to join in, and I hear what's missing in our little group of performing, all with bongos and a guitar, and it's missing. It's missing the electronic portion, in my ears.
And it was
really
just
hard.
kind of unheard of from him, and it was just like, just really couldn't understand. And then Kristen goes, well, I don't really understand how I say what I do. And I was like, well, you're kind of like the fifth Beatle too,
Circuit bender.
and it was like, yeah, but it's definitely more than the fifth Beatle, because it's still, as a composer and a songwriter, and even though you don't play traditional instruments, per se, even though you played I've been teaching her how to play drums through the years, and she has a very strong understanding without knowing theory. Mm-hmm. It's still a musicianship, so it's still kind of complicated that, we're both kind of odd in the way that, in production style, I tend to chop and clean, and, I feel like if I were just to make music, it would be almost formulaic and kind of boring. And then Kristen, will go in and start, I'm going to record this pop canon. I'm going to manipulate the sound and make it sound like a spaceship, or and she can do these things, and it's really fun. And how she'll take field recordings, and she's just not scared to turn knobs and mess with the sound. And when I'm on the other hand, like, oh, I'm gonna mess it up, and she was like, oh, I'm gonna mess it into place.
Yeah, we're gonna mess it up,
Right.
but that's gonna be good.
Yeah,
we're gonna totally mess it up. Rearrange, flip. What is it? Missy Elliott, flip it and reverse.
Yeah. So it's like, that's where it's like even hard to describe, where, it's almost, like a little bit of circuit bending, and, manipulation and design and understanding panning and understanding, like, I want the sound to tickle and spin above my head. I want the sound to tickle like my temples, and these things of I never had ever thought of it. I'd felt it, but I didn't even know I was feeling it until it was pointed out. And I was like, oh, yeah, you're right.
And she doesn't dance. Or she does dance, but I'm saying, like,
Not
pop
well.
locking is where you should have spots in production of silence to rev up, like,
Sure.
tension and release, you know? So I always imagine pop locking. I don't know. I just really like, I don't know how to pop lock very well, but I know a lot
And
of
it's
stuff, but not to the full extent of each thing.
yeah, because it's interesting because the sound actually moves you. And even as a drummer, I got the beat, I got the rhythm. I just, on my feet, don't have the rhythm. I listened to headbanger music growing up. So I was like really good at nodding my head. And we went to this, a friend was moving and we went to this night that was, what was it? It was like 80s synthwave. And the music, and I was like, at that moment I felt, I was like, the way this snare, its release is drawn out, it makes your body move a certain way. And I started to understand of, oh, wow, like we can guide people's
Also,
body.
since they put the snare all the way front on the mix, it's like you naturally makes your head lead with whatever the loudest thing is on the mix. And so it makes your body, like, so the whole 80s party was,
Like they're dancing a certain way for a reason. And it started to be like, oh, well, each genre of music, they're dancing a certain way for the reason because the music is moving the body.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a big thing for me. It was like, oh, wow. I don't know how to dance, but now I'm understanding how it's making people dance a certain way.
Yeah, I actually,
you can possess
one of the
people.
notes that I have is that I heard a little bit of that 80s synthwave in your guys' music. It has a little bit of that. The closest thing that I could, this isn't a direct comparison, but the closest thing that it brought to mind was like the Stranger Things soundtrack, like that type of like 80s
fun.
type of stuff like that. One of the things about music is like I can hear a band and it will make me think of something else that isn't exactly the same as it, but it will make me feel the same way that other thing does. And so there was a couple things with your guys' music that did that where, like I said, like the band I was looking for on my phone was a band called IO Echo. And you should write it down and listen to it because it's fantastic. And so
I am.
your music made me feel the same way that did. And also it's the same thing as like I was saying about like the Stranger Things. Like there's a little bit of that in there. Even if it's just
Awesome.
like a little salt and pepper, you know what I mean? Like just a little flavoring in there. One of the things, there were 3 songs on your record that are songs that stood out to me that keep getting put into the rotation. I put you guys in, every week I make a Spotify playlist of whatever it was I was listening to in the art studio. And I had you guys on last week's Spotify playlist. And so Shady
I'll share
Beach,
it.
Dimes, and Hollow were like the 3 tracks that I really, really liked. And one of the things that first caught me when I was listening, like first pass, was on Shady Beach, how there's a vocal part that becomes actually part of the musical track.
It's the deep,
Yeah.
deep.
Yeah. And I thought that was super cool. Like that was like an initial hook where I was like, oh wow, that's different. That's not something I'm.
That happens. That's because our kitchen is right next to the studio, and then when you're trying to listen to a mix with a wall in between, you almost it's like a technique, I think, that engineers use, where if they can't figure out what's missing in a mix, you can figure it out if you put it behind a wall.
Because your brain will fill
Sure.
in the space
Yeah.
and say, oh, this is what it's missing.
And that's what happened right at when the deep
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Because we were like, oh, wow, that sounds really cool that's in there. And then it was like, whoa, it's not in there yet. But we both heard it.
Yeah. Like, yeah, keep going. Yeah, it's because we're talking to each other through this wall, too. It's funny because, Desiree cooks, and I don't know how to cook. So it's like we're always cooking beats or cooking food at the same time together.
Shady Beach was actually the most fun I feel like we had on the day of tracking because we had just gotten a Moog synthesizer. having our first analog synthesizer in a Moog is like a little motorcycle. It really feels like it's got a lot of power in there. And so here comes this low end, and we're like, oh my gosh, like it just felt so good. And it was like idea after idea just kept popping.
Kept going, yeah.
And we were just trying to get it recorded as quick as possible.
But the summer theme helped train thoughts too, because we had inspiration from that new Childish Gambino song where he made the vocals all stonerish, summery.
And something called like Summertime or something.
I barely, I don't know. Our roommate downstairs always plays it, or doesn't used to. But and then there was Will Smith, Summertime. There's this like really high pitch he does. It's from the same Moog, and Dr. Dre has that Moog, and there's a lot of like Dre-y, Will Smithy Mogan going on.
And what's ironic is like our neighbors play this song outside. I don't even know who's playing it, and we'll hear it every summer. And it's literally whatever Will Smith either sampled from or took
it's the high
from.
Pitch I'm talking about. It's just,
and it's that same high pitch.
It's
and
one
we're like,
key, one little note on the Moog, and then all it is just holding it down.
And it's just bending it.
And that's it. Yeah, he's just bending it. Yeah, and then it's because we needed some more high frequencies to fill in the spectrum. We were looking for some highs, and then the summertime song. It's like, oh my god! I mean, he does it like in a melody formation. We didn't do any. We just held it down.
And the other thing was like, it was actually not a song reference. Like we would, when we were about to create certain songs, we would kind of say, we want this to have a certain vibe, or like, like a Hans Zimmer vibe, or, what it will kind of like get an idea of like where we want to go, where we want to take it. And that song was actually, it even had the influence of the movie Smiley Face, because we thought that movie was and still think it's hilarious, and
the entire thing was shot in the style from that movie. Desiree studied the movie to figure out
what
how
movie
to
is
shoot
it?
Like that, like to have Smiley
it's
Face.
called Smiley
with
Face.
Anna Faris, because it's quirky, and to do cuts in
Don't know
video to make sure it's quirky.
It's really just this stoner movie, and she accidentally eats like a bunch of pot cupcakes and doesn't know it, and she has this whole day, and she's trying to go along with the things she was supposed to do in that day, and it's just like everything goes horribly wrong because now I've realized the nature of these cupcakes, and we are, I guess, we're more smokers than drinkers, and so the whole album was almost meant to be heard.
That song specifically was a dedication to our travel points that we saved up for an accumulation of a billion years, and we bought the Moog with those travel points on a Black Friday or Black Tuesday, whatever the big sale day is, whatever, I don't know, consumerism, and we gave up a beach for that Moog.
We had saved up enough travel points
to
go to Hawaii.
We rehabbed this house to make a studio, and then to get some rental income and stuff like that. And so now we have the studio, and then now we're like, okay, we're going to have a vacation after we finish our renovation. Mm-hmm. And then we're just like, vacation Moog.
Priorities.
And this is the middle of winter.
In Chicago. Yeah, so that's what we thought. It was like with Shady Beach was, we want the song to take us to a beach in some way,
Yeah.
So if we perform or whatever.
To feel like a beach.
Well, you did a good job. That's a great song. It's super. It makes you feel super chill. So I think you totally nailed it.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
One of the other songs was that song Dimes, and maybe that is a similar inspiration, because it feels like the drum. One of the drums in it almost feels like a steel drum. And it...
Yeah, that's a Moog, actually.
The main drum.
Yeah, and so it's like, that was also another thing that stood out, as I was like, oh, wow, this is like... It's a little bit more upbeat. But, it's like I'm cooking my breakfast and I'm like, rocking out.
Yeah. Definitely help you wake up. Yeah, Dimes was, we were actually really trying to pull for a dance song. Like we kept, I think Dimes was about the fourth or fifth song we'd made on the album, and everything kept coming out emotional. And, we were like, oh no, but, we became Dance Loud because we were a DJ and a drummer, and we played house music, and we were like
we're actually trying to purposely make it so it could mix with a certain song that we have in our set list. That's like I guess like the most modern classic now, because it's like a new school song, but it's used as much in the frequency here in Chicago as much as the classics. It's like this DJ, I can never pronounce his name right, Dennis Ferrer, and it's called Hey Hey, and I wanted to keep that in our set list for when we perform. And then we were trying to make a song that will mix really well with it emotionally and synthy. So that was like me doing drum stuff with the snare, marching snare thing. And then, so it was my attempt to be a drummer. Desiree recorded a lot of the drums because she does like the perfect timing on the ride. So we needed her on the ride for that one. And we wanted to use the ride cymbal to make you feel like it's the bouncy hi-hat, but it's not a hi-hat, but it makes you supposedly bounce in a jazzy, housey way, because I really like the song by Saint Germain, and called Rose Rush. I don't know. It's like I can't even pronounce all these
Yeah, it has a really good
things in my
right.
iTunes. Yeah, that's the ride symbol is from the Saint Germain band person.
Yeah,
duo,
yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
what
Inspiration,
they are.
yeah.
Inspiration,
Because
yeah.
we're like, ooh, we like how it drives.
So we're exactly like your wife, where it's like, I have my favorite performance of a ride symbol in this song here, and then I have my favorite snare, like the what was it, like 32s or something? The
yeah, like
marching
weird
snare.
inspirations.
When you guys
Yeah.
play live, how do you? What's the setup?
We're in the midst of an evolution. You know, when we first started performing, Kristen was on vinyl turntables. I was on drum kit, and then with this album, you know, we didn't really intend for me to even do vocals. I knew that we needed to give every part of everything we had to give and truly give it our all. If we want a future in music, we need to, you know, I don't want us to become a wedding band, you know, and I wanted us to go more of an artist route versus
Sure.
an entertainer route. So we're in the midst of this change of, you know, I tried to make my drum kit smaller so I could still have the drum kit. I would, you know, play drums on dimes, you know, in certain songs. And then other songs I would get up and, you know, play guitar and vocals. And Kristen, you know, has a drum machine, and she's, you know, she's also spinning. And now she's jumped to CDJs, which has been a, you know, trying to help. Sorry.
To better explain it, what we did was take the audio recordings that we recorded with a microphone and all that stuff, or whether it be from the Moog or something, and even if we're playing a piano or synth, like the steel drum you're talking about in dimes, like we just bounced out one tone from that Moog and put it into a drum pads so I can hit it like a drum, because my brain is more drummy hitting stuff instead of like a piano person. So we just put the Moog into the drum pads, and I beat those, and then it'll be different instruments, whatever happens to be the lead. So the steel drum thingy is the lead in dimes, and then Hear Me Out, it's like that boom, boom, boom. So we just chose like the most upfront stuff with the highest volume to perform that, and then, you know, with Dimes Desiree, our favorite way to perform it, because there's different ways to perform it. It really depends on if it's going to be like the club set or the
Sure.
live set,
The venue.
right? Right? Because there's like, you know, there's this there's many duos that are doing, or even trios that are doing like two different versions depending on the space. So what we did was we have like 3 different ways to perform the whole album, and it's different, yeah, depending on the venue.
So we'd done a couple record store gigs, and it was small in space. It's not really set up perfectly for sound. So it was like, well, drums are out. We can't have drums here, you know.
It's gonna
So
hurt people's ears.
it's nice. It made us a little bit more versatile because, you know, a lot of times we were always the mixture, that duality of analog and digital. And we were always too clubby for venues, and we were always too rock for clubs. And we're still that way, you know. So, but now we're opened up a little bit more that we can play in different spaces. I'm not dependent on having my drums. We can now, you know, fly places where, you know, I could just bring only a guitar and a microphone. Kristen could bring some flash drives and, you know, this drum machine. So now we're like, you know, able to fly. We don't just have to be in our tour bus on the road. The drums and decks were really kind of weighing us down. So this album lifted that.
Which, when we bought this drum pad thing, FYI, it's an Alias Alesis. What the hell did I buy? Strike Pad normally that brand is only a consumer level, but like Denon in the DJing level or brands, they've really gotten past like the pioneer level in the last lineup. They call it like this strike line or the pro level of stuff, but we didn't even intend for me to play that. That was supposed to be for Desiree so that she could bring a drum kit on the plane. We thought we were gonna be like, yeah, we're just gonna fly to Europe with no money and.
But we tested it. It was the response.
Yeah.
Hit response was better than the Roland.
Yeah. It was.
And we'd even put out an Instagram like, Alesis or Roland, and there was a lot of people that responded to it, and a lot of people that
Roland's
really
main industry
are doing
standard.
really well and touring, and doing big things. And a lot of they all picked Roland.
I
And
always had doubts about Roland. I know it's so bad, but I'm not a fan of the 808. I know.
Well, I mean, oh shit! I just hit my mic.
Can't believe I said it out loud.
As far as hip hop goes, I mean, it is the 808.
yeah,
It is. I mean,
It helps so
both
much with
the
so many
Moog
genres.
and the 808 though accidentally messed up on their voltages and made something go over the limit in technically voltage wise, and that's how they got bigger, better bass than everyone. But those accidents really is the reason why
Yeah,
they are the best. But
in the death
Roland-
metal world, there is a little shitty distortion pedal called the Heavy Metal 2, made by Boss, and
I'm gonna buy
it was universally hated by pretty much everybody. And these kids in Sweden figured out that if you cranked all the knobs to the right, it made the most ungodly guitar sound, and it sounded like a goddamn chainsaw, and it pretty much created death metal. And it's like now those pedals are so hard
Yeah.
to come by, and there's a million people who make a pedal that sound like that. But yeah, forever it was like that. The heavy.
I know. It's taking a square wave and making it sound like butter smooth.
Yeah,
like square
yeah,
wave.
So I totally get that. The last band that I was in, both guitar players played through HM2s, and in one of our guitar player, one of them, we were doing an interview or something, and somebody asked about it, and he's like, "Yeah, we just decided to take this, $20 piece of shit pedal, plug it." $5,000 worth of guitars and amps into it so that it sounded like $10. I'm a vocalist.
What do you play?
I wouldn't say I'm a singer.
vocalist. Oh, fun. Nice.
Yeah,
that
well,
good growl.
yeah. The last band was, I come from the hardcore punk scene, and the last band was a bunch of like death metal and grindcore guys that were in our circle of friends here in LA. Decided that they wanted to do like a crust punk band, and they're like, "Well, you're like you're the hardcore guy. You should sing." And I
fun.
was like, "Well, and these were all guys. They all had bands with deals and like touring, like full blown, like well known death metal guys who wanted to do something different. So we started this side project, and then it kind of became. It is like we had a record deal like immediately, and we're on festivals like immediately, and I was like I hadn't even sang in a band in like 15 or 20 years, and I was like all of a sudden I was like in front of like 1,000 people, and I was like, holy shit, I don't know what I'm gonna do, but it was super fun, and I got to see the world for a number of years with all of my best friends, and it was probably the greatest experience of my life outside of having my children. It was super fun. It was amazing. And then I realized I was probably a little bit too old to be happy touring in a van and sleeping in punk houses and shit all over the world. And so I bowed out, and they're still going. The singer that replaced me is still in the band. They just put out a new record during the pandemic, and it's absolutely fantastic. It's their best record for sure. They're so much better. They're so much better off with John singing for them than when I was singing. But we had a good time. It was a super good time. Every single band I could have ever dreamed of wanting to play with that were like favorite bands growing up, I got to share the stage with every single one of those bands all over the world, and it was insane. It was just the coolest experience, for sure.
Oh man.
Yeah.
awesome.
When you
That's
guys
beautiful.
when you guys tour, do you tour
Yeah.
alone, or do you tour with other acts?
We
Always-
toured with our homies. Like whoever
Yeah,
wanted
alone.
to come. Yeah, we it would be either alone or we would meet our friends in different cities and they would hang out with us for a few days and go back home. We drop them off at a bus station or something. Or we had our buddy that stayed with us the whole tour a couple times. Start to finish. Yeah.
We have yet to experience touring with another band.
Yeah, we do
which would
not.
be fun, to set up bills together. And, I'm really not sure how the future is looking, but, on the bright side, since it was our first time pressing on vinyl and stuff and opening the doors of playing record shops and being able to meet people and it be intimate and do this kind of micro level marketing versus macro.
Future, whatever, we're doing it. We're going to Europe. I'm going. I've never been. I'm going. I was just thinking like, well, this album could be a way to make it a little bit cheaper or
Right.
something. I'm already
Get
gonna
paid
do.
at least well, that's the difference between the United States and Europe, is that you can tour in the United States and get paid almost nothing every single night. It's oftentimes hard to get a guarantee. And in Europe, you will always get paid. You will always get a place to sleep. You will always get when you get there, they will feed you, and then they will give you all the beer you could possibly want. And then afterwards, they will feed you again and give
see,
you a
it's more
place to
motivation
sleep
for
and a
us.
place to take
Yeah.
a shower. The touring experience in Europe versus the United States it isn't even the same thing. So if you do go, make sure to book yourself a tour.
It's really refreshing to hear.
It is.
Yeah.
We tended to keep with the southern states because we had somewhat of a good southern hospitality compared to the north. We did notice, but man, hearing that about Europe, makes me want to go send emails.
Yeah, definitely. And that's where, I think we are, as being a couple that, work together musically and creatively, we're very driven in the sense that it's almost hard for us to have fun if we're not being productive
feel
in
ya.
some way. So our tours would always be half vacations, and we like to hike.
We call them vor.
We called them VORs, because they were vacation tours, and we'd stop by thrift stores and breweries, and we do a ton of hiking, and we'd always look up sacred spaces and try to find old Native American, any type of history, and we always have this inside joke that we're looking for this like hidden civilization, and every time we go hiking, we're like, yo,
Looking
here's
for a
the key to
Here's
the
the key. It's the key.
yeah, and it's just this like ongoing weird thing, and that's where I do feel good about this album, that we're opening up the opportunities of playing in different spaces, because right now we really need to be more open-minded to that, and I really think that So Far Sounds and Tiny Desk are what people want, versus there's the experience of being in a festival and you're with other people and it's great and you're experiencing something really big as one, and that will always serve its purpose. It's kind of like going to a movie theater and seeing these really big, great productions versus going to someone's, YouTube channel and seeing maybe, a short film and seeing the creativity and stuff that goes behind it, and they're a little bit more attainable, and you can actually speak with them and ask them questions. And so our next project, we're going to be working on a stop motion short film because I enjoy doing stop motion.
That's her jam.
And-
She's been saying this for centuries.
Yeah, and we're going to score it, and it's going to be a continuation off of this first album. So, this first album was The Moment, and this next project will be In Life. And we're kind of trying to create our own little Marvel universe using multimedia. And that's, I feel like, we'll see what the future has to hold, but that almost opens up even more doors where, it could be, we could set up a tour where we, perform, at a festival, in a music store, grab a radio show, then go to a film festival.
A library.
And it's just opening more doors and trying to create more unique experiences for people. And the biggest thing is going to conferences, like we really want to go to the Sync Summit and the Independent Gamers Conference and just go and meet people and other passionate, creative people.
Desiree has always wanted to do with her video friend one of those collaborative music videos, right? It's like 3 music videos in one. You like video games, like what's that company that did that that we played?
Oh,
Telltales.
Telltales, yeah.
Where you choose the direction.
Oh wow.
The audience chooses physically with their touch, touching the answers. Like, would you like the guitars to sound with this or that? I don't know.
Yeah, so it's kind of always keeping, our options open. And, I'm really excited for like the overall project. Like I have it in mind. I know what it's going to look like at the end, and it's going to take us 10 years to get there. But which we're fully prepared for, that we, through a one short traumatic experience was like, okay, let's get this together and let's get this project going. We've been talking about it for years. Let's just do it. And it feels so good to have the first part done. The next part of it will take us a couple more years to create.
A couple more years to earn the money to create it.
That too. We want to do like some big upgrades to our studio and get a new Burl interface and a couple Neve mic pre's and a Telefunken Copperhead, some hardware compressors. And now we're looking at like at least another 10 plus grand to increase our signal flow.
We accidentally got really into the art of mastering. The mastering engineer stuff. Oh my God, it's me and her. It's like you might as well drop us off at the casino, and we'll just pour all the money. Pour it
in the studio. It's just so when we get like another 30 grand, now we can start pulling in more mastering gear, and now we could actually start mastering for others and hopefully make some money. Well,
your record sounds fantastic. So whatever you guys learned or did, you did a fantastic job. The record sounds amazing.
Thank you.
Really appreciate that. And we always joke around about how we tried to create high fidelity on a lo-fi budget.
Like this microphone over here.
And finding underrated gear. And here's a shout out. We're not endorsed by these people, anything, but it really did help us through this album. There was this website called Equipboard, and you could go see, the Neve 1073, and you can see every single person who's used it. And it even goes into
song it's used, and the source. It'll take you exactly where they're getting this information from. It's the best. It just because I used to have to dig through this through reading magazine articles at Barnes and Noble,
and try to figure out what are people using. How are you getting it sound so big? How are you? It's so hard to figure out. And then that in the end, you end up you buy something and you're like, I don't really like it, and you learn the ins and outs of it, and you can't return it, especially plugins. So then we were able to like really start having educated purchases and doing more with little versus a little with a lot.
Mm-hmm. But having trained ears is probably the most skill that is the cheapest, easiest to learn, and will save you the most. Because, man, I've hunting for underrated gear is quite a fun thing to do if you have the ears for it. I mean, because that Shady Beach is recorded on a broken ribbon microphone. And it's one of my favorite vocals. There's two microphones. It's just not just one, but it was one of our audio experience that worked out, even if it's broken. I'm going to fix it, though. I'm going to fix it and make it into an AKG C4, like $1,000 microphone.
Just from a production standpoint, your guys' video is completely stopped, but we're still getting audio.
I noticed yours. Yeah, now yours caught back up. And now
it's totally fine.
Paused.
Totally fine. A little bit.
Okay.
To you touched on of like some vocal stuff, and I mentioned the tracks that stood out, and that the track "Hollow" stood out because of the vocal it's such a beautiful vocal on that, and it was like immediately caught me with that vocal.
Thank you.
Yeah, the lyrics were. That comes from me working with children for like a million years, because I think that children's books are the way to go when it comes to writing, because especially for electronic dance music, there's not much vocals ever in it for a reason, because there's too much going on, so it's really hard to jam in something like that, to make it more, because just adding vocals really drives a lot of people. We're not actually, both of us are both not vocal driven ever. We never have. So it was very difficult, especially for Desiree, for us to get through this vocal obstacle, which is not having much experience with it at all. But yeah, the whole body of it was, it's totally like, I don't like to have too many words or syllables ever. Like I'm not even like we both are not into the genres where, you know how like
Sure.
there's songs that sound like a journal entry. You know, I like the short, concise stuff.
And we both made a very conscious decision that we are not going to say words that mean nothing to us. You know, everything was it had to speak something that we felt strong enough about,
Sure.
that we felt should be said. And so that's where, like, you know, every
Dream.
huh?
Remember the dream of your audio engineer god?
I did. I had this audio engineer god in my dreams guiding us through the album and telling me how to
amazing.
mix and showing me gear I didn't know existed. And then I would go search for it and find that existed. And it was exactly what we
That
needed.
is
It was
weird.
just so weird.
Desiree's always been the Sixth Sense person over here on this end here. But she this audio dream of hers kind of went into a very standard pop technique where you just don't have, I mean, vocal production, they'll have like 30 tracks. You know, like we saw Dua Lipa's session. It was like, wow. Talk about harmonizing. Like, that's going to take like an arm and a leg to get done. You know, it's done what we did, because we didn't even know what an SSD drive when we had this album being made. So we had issues, obviously we still kind of do, with our computer always freezing on us. So we were working on this whole album, and it was forced to be minimal music because we didn't know what an SSD drive could be like night and day when it comes to audio producing. Jeez. So everything was like under 50 tracks, and Hollow was one of the most minimal ones. And to make the vocals sound big and, you know, awesome like that, not only does Desiree have like a giant, like I feel like she's like a Neumann microphone, like she just has a lot of frequency to give. It's not, you know, it's not narrow, it's very wide. And it all comes out at once. It's not even like we're adding this, you know, but this pop technique was also a big difference because it's like you take different takes and you put it left, center, right, you know. And then the Fab Filter EQ was it did clean it up a lot because I didn't even realize because I had such a hard time putting money into audio because you just never, more likely, you don't get it back. So this was also the album for the first time that we dumped like just $2,000 into software, like a quality EQ. Like it's actually going to take out that frequency, unlike free stuff where it's still in there, didn't cut it.
Yeah, and it was just odd. Like I had a dream about the EQ that we needed, and I'd never seen an EQ like that before. And then I went and I searched for it, and then towards the end, one dream that we didn't end up acting upon was I had a dream about a piece of mastering software, a mastering compressor we needed. And then I was like, well, it's like $3,000. So
Next album.
Okay, next album. I'll just keep side note.
But that is like, it happens to be the number one thing I want because of this.
It was really odd. And I think, with this album, we went full time with it and we opened our brain space. And we weren't
using free stuff anymore.
And we weren't clouded by a lot of things. We weren't watching the news. We weren't watching TV shows. We weren't anything. I mean, it was just our lives were driven around audio, and the movies we'd watch were movies or documentaries about musicians to keep ourselves continually inspired.
Like politics right now and all that stuff is going on. It bombards your brain to the point where brain space, in our belief, is straight up real estate space. It's valuable. It's
Don't
really
let it
valuable.
in.
Because if you have a job, it's almost like even if you're only working 1 day a week, it's almost, I think, impossible to create a full-length album while working 1 day a week. It sounds terrible that I'm saying this, but your brain is bombarded even if you're working just a second a week.
Yeah, but it's like it's saying that if you are the composer, songwriter, engineer, producer,
there's a lot
artist,
of bandwidth.
if you're doing every part of it,
to create something. Yeah, for sure. I totally get that.
Yeah.
I mean, as a kind of corollary to what I'm doing, it's like, when I started this podcast, I had never filmed anything. I had to figure out what camera I needed, how to make it work. I had to figure out what software I was going to record with. I'd never recorded myself with a microphone before. I'd always been in a studio where somebody did it. I had to figure out lighting. I got to completely figure out how to basically make a goddamn TV show and a radio show all at the same time. And I never interviewed anybody. You know what I mean? Like I never had interviewed somebody for something. I didn't know what I was doing. I just figured I like to talk and I could probably figure it out. And the first 3 months of production on this podcast, I was like, by the time I was done at the end of the day, like I couldn't even keep my eyes open. I was beat. And I was still having to do like my full-time graphic design job too. And it's been going nonstop now since like March or April. So I'm just now ramping back up to recording guests, but it's been nonstop post-production and video editing and all this stuff ever since, March. And so I can totally feel you where, when you're trying to make a piece of art, all of the other things in life are a subtraction from your energy into making that thing. I totally get it.
Yeah, it's almost like you have to come completely clear-headed, and I see why a lot of people, they'll kind of isolate themselves in a different country to record an album.
Right. The Rolling Stones go to some cabin in the Alps for 6 weeks to record a record, and
Yeah.
Yep. That's what we were gonna do even before. Like we were gonna disappear to Arizona to like work and make an album in Arizona where there's forests or red rocks, whatever. Sorry, I'm ignorant.
Desert.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what, so we and then long story short, I got in this weird accident and got rear-ended in our tour bus and then spent a month in the hospital, and then after that we were like, all right, what's our priorities? We almost got taken off this planet and something kept us here, so let's get it done. And it was like I couldn't have, having the financial scare of, taking away our part-time jobs, but then at the same time, like we built this house and we rent to 2 friends and they help us pay our mortgage and they've helped create our lives. We don't strive to make more money. We just strive to make our lives cheaper. And so we were just like, okay, well, we just can't go out to eat. That's the sacrifice. We can't have luxuries. We can't travel.
No shady beach.
Yeah, we can't,
It has to become a song because that's free.
No.
No. Mm-mm. Yeah, it's free.
Yeah. And so, that's what was the big thing. The change was...
The video also, I'm going to have to interrupt you. This is a good part of the interruption. It's going to compliment you. The Shady Beach, because we had no money and we had to give it up, we spent like 2.5, so 2,500 on Hear Me Out's music video, but Shady Beach, because of the whole birth of it.
There you go.
$350. Yeah.
And shouted ourselves.
So we were trying to do high-fi.
I like it. That is a
audio.
When I started this podcast, I wasn't sure exactly what the overriding theme would be. It was just like I've been in the creative industries between being in bands and the skateboard industry and the video game industry and the music industry and all these different things for so many years. I have all these friends who do all these different creative things on different levels, chefs and directors and writers and musicians and all different types of stuff. And I just knew that I had these people that would sit down and talk to me, and everybody started doing that and ended up being that the kind of theme of this show is DIY. It's people who make things without asking permission or without waiting around for somebody to help them or give them a way to do it. It's about this show is about people who make things simply from sheer will and the desire to make them. So the fact that you guys just gave me all that backstory about that's how your music came to be it ended up working out perfectly.
It did, because people, won't, I remember when we were building our tour bus and we had bought a shuttle bus that looked like something you would see at an airport or a hospital. And when we told our friends, they were like, oh, well, that's not going to happen. Yeah, and it was because they couldn't see themselves doing it. And so when people tell you and question you and act like, they can't do that, or
that
you
will
can't
need-
do it.
or that will need help.
It's no, that they just don't see it, and they just don't see the vision, and don't let it change your life. Don't let someone's poor opinion about, what you
never,
think you can
and
do
never ever,
steer you
never
in that way.
ever
And
let some
We almost-
naysayer
yeah.
tell you what you can or can't do. I
No.
firmly believe that. It goes back to me growing up in the early American hardcore punk scene, where it was like, 15-year-old kids putting out their own records. Like, we just figured out how to contact the record manufacturer. Like, you don't need a record label, you could do it yourself. And there's Elks Lodges in every city that are waiting to get booked. They're sitting there empty, and they'll rent it to you, and you could put on your own shows, and you could do everything that grown-ups could do. You could do it yourself. And so I think there's a whole generation of Americans, from the 80s on, that kind of really benefited from that. And I think, and I've mentioned it before on this show, that the last major recession at the end of the 2000s, it created a lot of new maker industry where people lost their jobs, and they couldn't get another one. And so it was like, well, I guess I'll start that furniture company that I wanted to start. I guess I'll start that, whatever it is. And so we got this killer maker industry in this country of artisanal, small batch stuff, whether it's, beer or music or furniture or candles or all these different things. And for me, as being the person that I am, and how inspired I am by people who just make their own way in life, because I'm a little bit of an anarchist in that way, and I'm an individualist, and I value people's own
We took a
power
quiz, and that's what we
more than just about any other thing, and to see that grow. And then when I hear people like you guys come on the show, and you tell me that you are also using that same power to do your thing, that's a total thumbs up from me. That's a double thumbs up. Not only do I like your music, now I love everything about you guys.
And I would say it's more Desiree's influence is very DIY. I'll give her props to that, because I was always like the curator of the best people to find the best stuff and pay for it. Like, for example, the mastering engineer was amazing that we hired. But we came this album, like, we came to a perfect match between those two things.
I thought it was the psychological condition I had. Actually, I hit up a good friend that's a social worker, and I was like, is there a psychological condition where someone just wants to make every single part that's in their life? I'm like, this summer I'm going to make a bunch of pottery that we're going to eat off of, and I just have this constant drive.
The plant that we're going to eat to put on the pottery.
Yeah, when we made the album, like, I homebrewed the meads and the beers and ciders and everything that we'd used to create it, and every part of everything we'd created it. And then I was wanting to get into creating microphones.
I made all the plants to consume for the album making.
Yeah, and as I was, and my friend was like, no, it's not a condition. It's just about being self-sufficient. But it is this underlying thing where, I was like, I want to get into designing microphones. And Kristen's like, well, these Germans did a really good job, and they've been around for like 100 years, and they have these warehouses, and, they're just killing it. So we should just let them continue to kill it. And maybe we can get into microphone modification.
Yep. Yeah, we're going to get into microphone mods, And then, but I'm not going to make a Mogami cable, because there's this factory that they own, and it's like a block long, how long they stretch their cables. And I'm just going to continue to buy Mogami cables.
Yeah, so, it's like that. And so that's where it was, I was so driven on, when I'd seen, we keep bringing up Pink Floyd because we watched it earlier today, but, Roger Waters was, taking the sound of change and, throwing it down and just creating all these like different sounds. And, we'd walk through cities and just, go into parking garages and try to find these cool sounds. And it was just, that was the best part, because it was almost like hide and seek in a way, that was like, these sounds were hiding. We knew what we wanted to hear. We wanted to add cicadas to the album. So we went, hiking, and we went camping, and we went and found one single cicada to record. And we just started driving everything we did for the album, and would just find these weird little sounds. And And that's where it means that much more is
It's like a game. When we
it's like a
games.
game. You know, some
Treasure
people
hunt.
are into like treasure hunting records
Metal
and trying to find
metal detecting is-
samples. Like we, you know, are like more like metal detectors in that way of like just trying to find it.
Walking around with a Tascam portable recorder as though it's a metal detector, but we're not finding coins. We're finding
That's awesome. I love
sound
it.
recordings to use, and man, and it feel and like it's like the same euphoria, because you know how it's kind of like when you go through record crates, you just keep going for like hundreds and hundreds of records, and then there's this one like 4 beat. There's this one measure that is gold, and then you just know it. It invokes your body, and then so when you're out metal detecting or Tascam portable recording, whatever you want to call it, it feels the same way as when you find a quarter.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
there it is. That's it. That's the one.
And it's strange because it's the duality of life that you have, you know, it's limiting in a way, saying that we have to create everything. But at the same time, it opens so many doors, you know,
And it's free.
and it's free. And we're doing it while hiking and things that we already like to do. And, you know, there was during the song Why Lie, we were at my parents' house and there was this storm, and they live in Southern Illinois and a very small town surrounded by cornfields. And you could see the galaxy so perfectly out there, and you could hear like the frogs and stuff in the background. And we immediately went on the front porch and started recording it. And so that's where a lot of our like ambient sounds came from, were just, you know, field recordings of nature. And that was the biggest thing. Was our last night on tour, we were in Ohio at the Serpent Mound, and we were sitting around a bonfire, and Kristen was like, oh my gosh, these crickets sound so good.
Like, so good.
And so for Hear Me Out, that was the first song we made on the album. We used those crickets, and it was like, oh my gosh. And at that moment, the soundscape, you know,
Sure.
when you're outside and there's a symphony going on at all times, all bugs and animals, and they're all working together as
Yeah.
one, and there's a rhythm.
I think it was so good because one cricket was on this beat and that other cricket on the right was on that beat. And then those two beats were completely different, but then together they were working as one.
It's a polyrhythm.
And they were louder in volume that night, just, I don't know, nature. And they wouldn't normally hit that kind of a level. And plus the Tascam has like a super wide angle. So that was like the closest to binaural microphones from that dude, what's his name? The
Lou
Cowboy
Reed?
Junkies song, Sweet Jane.
Oh, Brian Eno?
They use like a 3...
Was Brian Eno?
Yeah,
No,
did
no,
Brian
I
Eno?
don't, I don't
No,
know
it
who
was
the
the
engineer.
engineer.
It was the engineer. They use a sound.
I wouldn't know. I totally wouldn't know because I kind of famously
wouldn't-
don't
I,
like
like read this
Velvet
article a million
Underground
times. I
or
still
Lou
don't
Reed
know.
at all. So
Okay.
Yeah, you know, actually, me either. It didn't. It
that,
was
that
music
is a
that
good
didn't
song.
speak to
though.
me.
That
It
is a
was
very
just
good song.
Sweet Jane and that
Yeah.
church recording. Yeah.
And how they recorded it. You know, they'd taken 2 Soundfield microphones, put her up on the
Which
balcony.
is really 6 capsules,
Yeah.
you know, in 2 microphones. So that recorder that we have is the closest that I could afford to a sound-filled recorder. You know, because it's a super wide angle. It's uncommon, but yeah, I mean, people are paying monthly for Splice and something called Noise or something. Different companies like this. Splice is the major one, and I was just like, man, I can't be an
Yeah,
audio
no,
engineer, go to
of
school
course
for
not.
audio and then pay
Of course,
Splice to do
of
my
course
job.
not.
That's not cool. Not that it's a problem because it makes
Sure.
you can use it for idea popping. You know, if you
Well,
need 2
yeah,
seconds
and if you're
to
like me
create
and
an
you have
idea
absolutely no
real
ability
quick
to
and put it on
make
tape.
anything because you just don't have the resources or the know-how, yeah, you have to pay for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it sucks. I mean, I'm trying to learn the drums. Like,
Yeah.
but where there's a will, there's a way.
Sure.
There is, and the power comes from within. Always. I think a lot of people suffer from self-doubt, especially artists. And there's just this point that you have to understand that your art gets to the point of abandonment, and that's when it's done. And when you find that there's nothing else that's bothering you, that's, you know, whether it be graphic design or, you know, you'll look at an image and you're like, okay, this little point, you know, and you just get to the point where, all right, it doesn't bother me anymore. And now it's time to stop and move to the next.
That
And
was-
let's
yeah,
look
that
at it
was-
as an overall project.
Year 2 of out of 1 out of 2 years of making this album. Year 2 was correction year. Like, oh, okay, now we're down to 572,000. Okay, now 72. Okay, now 2.
My problem with
No
creation
problem.
Oh,
is
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
I have
Sit
so
behind the
many
computer and fix it all.
ideas all the time that I want to be done with what I'm working on because I'm already bored and I already want to start working on the next thing that I want to do. And that's like, I'm really good at finishing things because I decided I was going to be a professional graphic designer, illustrator, no matter what. And I wasn't going to go back to having a job. And so I have to finish things or I don't get paid. I'm really good at finishing things, but I'm also got really good at figuring out the fastest way to do everything so I can be done with it and move on to the next thing. One of the things, like a good example is I bought this drawing tablet next to me so that I can just draw digitally. I haven't drawn on paper in like 4 years because it just removes steps out of getting something done. I can just draw it all right here. I don't have to scan anything. I don't have to clean anything up. I don't have to do anything. I can just do it all in there. I can paint
yeah, I've
in
seen
there. If I want to do an
amazing
oil
tablets
painting, I
these
can do
days.
an
Awesome.
authentic oil painting on my tablet and nobody would know the difference. Yeah, it's
they have, like,
it's
full-on
insane.
Adobe
It's
up in those
totally
things now.
insane. And so like, it's like that's my problem is like I just want to be done with it so I can get on to the next cool thing that I've got to do because I keep tons of projects going all the time and so
I agree with
Yeah.
that. That's why we had 10 unfinished songs before this album, and we had that issue of finishing stuff, and then we just just smoked more and did it. I don't know what. We just I guess it. Yeah, we took away all the brain space, so we made sure we weren't working too many
For
jobs
sure.
while doing this too. That really helped out finishing stuff, but the unfinished stuff stayed unfinished forever because it went within the tour bus that went it was in the computer. I'm so bad at backing up.
Yeah, it was a weight lifted off our
Yeah.
shoulders. It needed to go.
I don't even want to finish them anymore.
And it was to teach me how to engineer, and that's what it was. And so we were stuck because we had these unfinished songs. So when they got taken away from us, it was the best thing that could have ever happened to us because we're starting with a clean slate. And originally we were planning to do an EP, and then it was like, no, let's be album artists and singles, no EPs. And from there, that was a big turning point when I knew that by the time we were done, we will have, for 2 years we had researched everything, that when it came to final mix, it was like, okay, let's replace this bass line with a Moog. Let's replace this, software instrument of a piano and put a slide guitar in it. And from there, that was a huge turning point that
But that's usually
I'm
what the
glad.
producer does, and then so we're like over here producing our stuff.
yeah, well, I
doing,
mean,
like,
you guys basically
replacing
became the
tracks and things
producers,
like that.
engineers, and artists on your
Yeah,
record,
we
which
just kept-
that's amazing. Do you suppose you going to start recording other bands and artists as a means of income, or is it just going to always be for your Dance Aloud?
So we figured out that after the sorry to bring it up again, but the Roger Waters dude and EMI let him have as much studio time as possible, unlimited studio time, and I think and Daft Punk does this too. I think we're the type that needs so much unbelievable amounts of time to think and be alone that that's the only way to do it. So if I were to record a band, I would probably spend too much time to the point where you go in an endless loop and go back to the first correction was the correct correction rather than 10 million corrections later, and then you do the first thing that you thought of. Yeah, I don't think I want to do that for other bands, but I want to get into just
Right.
tracking only.
tracking and mastering, just no
'Cause
mixing.
It's just like one day or whatever, how long it takes you to track, and then you don't have to sit behind. Because we both hate.
You would
sitting
hate my
behind
life
computers.
then, because that's all I
We
do.
just like to touch stuff and, Yeah, oh my God. I mean, it's hard enough using. I mean, the whole album is on a computer. Even if you put analog, it
Yep.
doesn't matter. It goes all back to cleaning it up on the computer, and so we really, our dream now is to get another property, make it into a studio and track.
Yeah, we wanna buy a old fire station.
Firehouse that we can park a new bus in, and then
Yeah.
then take it out, and then create a live room. And then the balcony will be the control room. Too many ideas.
But that's where, I'm not opposed to tracking other bands and
Sure.
spending a couple days just recording them and making sure they're recorded right. And then, they can find their own mix engineer that will mix it for them.
I'd
And
rather
then,
teach a person to produce, not do their producing.
and then in the future, I would like to master other people's work
Yeah.
as well, and us do all of our own mastering in-house. And then it can help us pay off all of our mastering gear.
Because the mixing and producing takes forever, and then you go into the endless loop thing of like graphic design with the logo. The first logo is the best logo, and
Yeah.
then the client is never satisfied until you go back to the first logo. Like you have like 10 different versions, and then it's the first that wins. It's like the same thing.
My
with mixing.
experience with
Mixing and,
clients
producing.
and artwork is you give them 3, you give them the one that you want to do, you give them the one that is somewhere between what you want to do and what they ask for, and you give them the one that they asked for, and they will always end up picking the one that you wanted to do in the end. No matter how many times you go down the road of trying to pull something out of nothing from their idea,
rabbit
they'll
hole.
always end up with what you did, because that's why they came to you in the first place. It's because you're a professional and you know what you're doing, and they should have just listened to you when you told them that their idea wasn't that great to begin with.
But even if you can predict the route of the rabbit hole and you can see the future, even as an engineer producer, I still, if it's for our own album, not someone else's, prefer to go into the rabbit hole, because now I'm 150% confident.
Sure.
After the rabbit hole. That's like, after the album was done, we went through a rabbit hole in every single way possible. So I was like super confident about it, and I still am. And with your words, it's like, it's only feeding.
Is your guys' record
To do
self-produced?
more
Is
stuff
it
with
self-published? Did you release it yourself, or is it on so your own label then?
Yeah.
We actually didn't
think
even-
we didn't make a label. I think we accidentally were forced to call.
You
we
have
had
to.
fill in the bar that says label, and then we just wrote "Dance Loud." I don't know. It's probably gonna be different. We'll probably we've always thought, since I did real estate for so long, and I'd still do it, and then the rehab. This is in our rehab, and this is a foreclosure. We always thought of naming our record label Foreclosure Records.
Because it would be a subset of house.
But we were scared it might be a bad omen. I don't know.
Yeah, honestly, it was, especially for this album, I'm not opposed to working with labels in the future. The way we look at things is what would Dolly do when it comes to business?
Dolly Parton.
Yeah, what would Jan Terry do when it comes to Drive? What would, there's
YouTube
certain...
star, underrated YouTube star.
Yeah, and the biggest thing is, if the contracts come in the way that we at least get 50% of masters and publishing, I'm not opposed. The one thing that was really good about this is we had to learn every single thing. We had to learn vinyl production, and we had to learn lacquer cutting, and we'd hired a guy that out of London, that his name is Matt Colton. He ended up becoming Mastering Engineer of the Year, and he worked with Radiohead and Tom York and Flume and a lot of people. And with him, he had this specialized lacquer cutting that he would do it in half speed. So when we,
It's really good for
pressed on
dancers with
vinyl,
a ton of bass.
we went with the highest weight, at 180 grams, and we had picked America's #1 vinyl pressing plant. And, from that, since we had to learn every single thing along the way, find the, company to do the holographic cover and all that I would actually never take that back. And I'm glad that we learned every part of it, because you can quickly become ungrateful when you don't really understand what
You
really
definitely
goes into
can.
it.
That's a weird
Just-
trap for sure.
Every restaurant owner should be a busboy. Yeah.
That's the truth. Yeah. Because
we treat our music, if in the business side, like like a restaurant would. You got to put money into marketing or effort, whatever it is, doesn't matter. And every owner should work every position, like the busboy, food runner, everything. Otherwise, the owner, it just, the root you won't have a foundation without it.
And we did look at it as, you know, I'd worked in restaurants for years, and I'd always said if I were to start a restaurant, it would be a fine dining restaurant that every single thing is made in house. And if it's an Italian place, we're making our bread, our noodles, our sauces, our everything from scratch.
I mean, we go down to the garden. We're gonna make the soil mixture to create the plants to make the plant-based pasta.
And so that's the route we took with our music, that, you know, we wanted to create every single part of it and it be the fine dining of music, even though we don't have, you know, the $100,000 studio, and we don't really have the.
So labels I see as, like, because I do real estate, it's just a home loan. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Nice.
If you can ever avoid having a record deal, avoid having a record deal. Like, I can tell you.
Yeah, it's the same. I mean, I feel more confident actually buying a multi-unit and using that to finance a marketing, you know, firm.
And it's nice that things are kind of moving in that way, that things are turning more into label services. And, you know, and we're in a rapid change and entering the age of Aquarius, and everything's turning very, you know, technology based, and it's just trying to have like a good understanding of the route things are going and what we're okay with. And I do like that we haven't been, you know, like the traditional way of a record label is they'll give you a bunch of money up front, and then they expect it to be paid back through record sales. And, you know, I think it was Van Halen said, we got back from tour, we owed the record label $3 million. If we go on another tour, we're going to owe them $6 million, because all the flights and all the parties and all the everything that they do, it's coming out of your pocket. And it was just, you know, more and more how the business had just kind of was messed up through the years. And then here comes streaming, and everything's perfect the way it is. You know, with every good comes a bad, and with every bad comes a good, and it drives art in that way.
Duality.
And I'm grateful for that. But I really like the route that we're going.
Oh, sure.
You know, and I like that we don't have someone over our shoulder telling us to water it down and take it down to a 6th grade reading level. So, you know, we could tickle teenagers. You know, it was like, I think that our music falls in the lines of like intelligent dance music. And, you know, we may have an older clientele that isn't so music driven, but at the same time, like, I would much rather people, you know, have an understanding of it, and it in a way that it's not meant to be watered down. And this album was a mirror of us putting it on the public, and just in my way, it was a lot of things I was frustrated about with employment and how people treat one another. And, you know, and so it ended up being just this really, that's why it came out so emotional, because it came from the soul. And in the end, you know, the first half of the album was our frustrations with the world, and the second half of the album was like
That's
our
awesome.
acceptance of it is perfect the way it is.
It's been totally
You know?
killer, like listening to you guys like explain the journey of this record, and that it isn't, you know, that there's so much of you guys in the making of the record and the idea behind the record, and just the fact that you tackled the entire project yourselves and learned all of the different parts of it to make the whole. It comes through in the record. It's a really, really good record, and it, you know, it's anybody who listens to it will be able to hear the value of the effort that you guys put into it, and I don't think that will ever be lost on anybody who ever listens to your guys' music, and that's its own accomplishment. We kind of missed your guys' social media shout outs in the beginning. I always like people to give them up front so that people can, because people invariably don't listen all the way to the very end. So where can people find you guys? I will make sure to put all of that in the description of the episode so people can find your guys' social media stuff. Where can people find you guys on social media?
On Instagram, we're at Dance Loud Music. Facebook at Dance Loud Music.
Excellent.
Spotify, just plain old Dance Loud.
Yeah, the social medias we try to push the most are like, we really need to kick up our Spotify and YouTubes. So truly, any follow really is the biggest help for us with booking shows in the future.
But I think the most interesting things we do is definitely Desiree's story making on that Instagram. She just loves doing the little stories.
Yeah.
It's so adorable. She just puts all those little cutesy things on it and everything.
The way I see it is, Deadmau5 had said, he had said, I hate when an artist, comes out, goes on tour, all this stuff.
Yeah.
The album's over, the promotion's over, they just go away. And
find 'em.
you can't find them. And he started streaming his own studio stuff. And I thought, that's true, and these days we are, when I watch our friends' stories, it's just our daily entertainment. What are you up to today? And so it's something I always try to make it a point to kind of, hey, this is the movie we're watching today on VHS, or
right. And
because it
we
always
live
does
in this
stem
weird
back
time
to
with social
inspiring the
media
music.
where your fans, they can connect to you as a person in a way that has never really been available ever before for artists of any kind. And it's part of the job now. You know what I mean? It really is part of the job. I think there's a guy named Gary Vaynerchuk who's like he's kind of like a motivational, like kind of bro kind of dude who like motivates like young entrepreneurs and stuff. And he basically, his quote on social media is, social media account is the price of admission to being a person of any real influence in the world these days. It's just, you got to.
And I agree with it. At first, still, I have a issue with it being active on social media since I didn't sign up for that job. But I will say, nowadays, with 80, in my belief, 80% of the world may not be the most favorable personality, but it's good
Sure.
to know what you're putting your heart into if it's a good person or business, because, everyone has to support businesses that
absolutely.
deserve
I
it
totally
from their
agree with that.
genuineness
Conscious
and
consumers.
Yeah, you have to. The population is too high, and we need to know if a musician is a cool person or
Right.
not.
Yeah. No.
Like,
Yeah.
cool is
Yeah. I
cool to
agree.
you.
I agree. And it's like everything's,
But
that is also part of the weirdness of the world now. Is that what comes along with that is that everybody's like under a microscope all the time, and if you are not a good person, that's gonna show.
It does. It speaks loudly.
the
Yeah.
population's so big that I guess we're
Yeah.
starting to police each other a little. Not maybe verbally or non-verbally, but it's happening naturally. And I think with as much hate
Well,
social
yeah,
media
it's
gets
like-
with our psyche, I think it's
It's
still
like
really
anything
positive,
else.
like
It's the tool.
duality
It's a
always
tool,
says,
and you
every
have
bad
to
comes
decide
good.
how you use that tool. And you can use it to stab somebody, or you can use it to
Definitely.
cut up some tomatoes and make sauce. You know what I mean? It's like a knife's just a tool. You can use it for good or bad. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you guys go. It was super, super, super awesome sitting and getting to know you guys and hearing about how you made your record, and I really appreciate your time.
Oh, I really
You
appreciate
too.
you.
Yeah, it was great hearing about, what you had to say about Europe and,
Yeah,
everything. And your wife, your family sounds awesome. Yeah. We really appreciate the time.
And the DIY concepts in your
it's important
ongoing
too.
theme in your podcast, because that's rare.
It's good to inspire others. We should,
If that's
Another one that's out there
if that's all I
inspiring
got
others,
left now that I raised
we all
my
need
kids is to
inspiration in the
inspire
world.
other people to go make cool stuff, I'll take it. Yeah, of course. Of course.
After
We
really
get off,
appreciate
stick
talking to
around
you
for a
and getting to know
second,
you.
and we'll wrap up. Don't just
We'll send over
jump
this,
off
like,
when
almost immediately.
when I say goodbye. All right, guys. I'll talk to you guys soon.